All right, everyone. So welcome to the virtual Pasadena Senior Center and the Cynthia Rosedale Memorial Sports Talk series, Ask the Athletes. I am Annie Lasky, the Director of Events at the Pasadena Senior Center and the manager of the Pasadena Senior Games, which I am sorry to announce, if you have not already heard, we will not be able to go forward with the Pasadena Senior Games in 2021. Although we do have hopes that other California Senior Games, including San Diego and the Encore Games, will be able to take place this year. The Pasadena Senior Center offers social services, physical fitness, and arts and culture programming to older adults. We are an independent, donor-supported nonprofit organization, and this program is named in honor of one of the Senior Center's staunchest supporters, whose legacy continues to fund our programs. Cynthia Rosedale, whose birthday was just a few days ago, I believe, as we remember her, she was the longtime director of events at the Pasadena Senior Center. A tireless advocate for senior wellness, Cynthia brought the Pasadena Senior Games to the center in 1994, when these athletic competitions for older adults were just beginning to spread across the nation. While we are still limited in what we can do safely in person, we celebrate Cynthia's power and vision by connecting virtually through this program and others. Ask the Athletes is co-presented by the California Senior Games Association with assistance from the San Diego Senior Games. We have sessions scheduled on second Mondays all the way through to December. Our next scheduled programs are women's basketball on May 10th, and we have a fantastic lineup of Hall of Famers. It's going to be pretty amazing. Tennis on June 14th and golf on July 12th. We hope you'll come to all of those, as well as this one that you are currently at. So now to the program at hand. During the presentation, audience microphones will be muted, but you are welcome to put your questions and observations in the chat box. And then at the end of the panel discussion, you will have a chance to unmute at the end for Q&A. If you have any problems with reception, the recording of this program will be posted later at the California Senior Games Association website, californiaseniorgames.org. And also, if you have your own camera on, turning your camera off may help your bandwidth. So just because late afternoon, sometimes there can be problems with the way that the internet is functioning. So on to the program. It is my privilege to introduce the moderator of today's program, Ann Warner-Cribbs. She is the chair of the California Senior Games Association and head of the Bay Area Senior Games and the Encore Games, and an all-around terrific lady. Please welcome Ann Cribbs.
Thanks, Annie, and thanks for all the work you've done to put this all together. It's nice to see everybody, especially some familiar faces that we haven't seen since we've all been locked down. So I really appreciate you all being here. As Annie said, I am the chair of the California Senior Games Association. We have 14,000 athletes in California that we send out our newsletter to, and there are 8 games, none of which have been held this year. But we're hoping, as Annie said, that San Diego will go forward in August and September, and I am very hopeful that at least the outdoor part of the Encore Games starting in late September, October, and November will go on, and both of those games will be qualifiers for the just moved Summer National Senior Games, which have moved from November of this year in, I think, an abundance of caution to May of 2022. So as I think everybody has heard, we have been doing these panel discussions because we miss you. And we thought it would be fun to focus on different sports, different months. And so we've really had 3 great panels. So panelists, the pressure's on, but I'm excited because I'm so interested in what our 5 panelists have to say. We have Olympian, a race director, competitors, record holders, and it's just going to be pretty interesting. I have to admit that I thought I could be a cyclist, but in August, when I was kind of trying out my cycling career, I had a crash and ended up with a pretty bad break in my ankle with a bunch of surgery, a couple of days in the hospital, a nice ride in an ambulance with some nice guys from Palo Alto Fire. And I have spent the last couple of months learning to walk again. So I'm now walking without lurching, but it is a long process. So I'm in tremendous admiration of all of you cycling folks on the panel. And so I'm going to do something fun. I'm going to start with the people on the panel who were first to log in, and we'll go in that order, and then we'll shake it up as we go through. But let's open it up and talk a little bit about your own cycling career, what got you into cycling and what you've been doing lately. So we're going to start with Sylvia, and in the 5 minutes before everybody else joined, I learned so much about endurance cycling, I guess I would call. So Sylvia, I'm excited to hear from you. I think you have to unmute.
Okay,
Welcome to the cycling panel. Glad to have you here.
thanks. So how did I start? I've been cycling since college. I got my first like real road bike in college, and I started doing lots of miles in college, and then did a lot of touring and bike packing and that kind of stuff all through the decades, along with lots of other sports. And then about, I don't know, 7 years ago or so, I was down in Borrego Springs, where I actually live and now, and they were having an event, and it said like Borrego 24-hour event. I had no idea what it was, so I went and checked it out, and I thought, oh, that sounds like something I might like, because I like to suffer. So I started getting into it, and I did started doing events. And so for the past like 6-7 years, I've been pretty heavily involved in it, with lots of events and lots of training, and 20,000 miles a year and 100 million climbing feet, and crazy distances and miles. And I like it. So.
Well, you could sure tell the enthusiasm comes through your voice, and I'm sure we're all going to have some questions afterwards about just the ins and outs of endurance cycling. So thank you very much for being here. I'm going to jump now to a longtime friend of mine, a huge supporter of the Senior Games, but a great athlete in her own right, and a very interesting person as well, Barbara Gicquel. Barbara, welcome. I think you're on mute. There we go.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, so I started cycling when I was, 6 years old, and picked up my brother's bike and rode down 39th Avenue to my parents' chagrin. I'd never had a two-wheeler, so they were a bit concerned, but I felt the wind in my hair, and that was the beginning of cycling for me. I couldn't wait to get my own bike, and of course rode all over San Francisco till I was a teenager and got interested in other things, mostly basketball. Basketball was a huge thing for me in high school. So I didn't get back into cycling until I was through competing with horses, or about to get out of that. I was living in near Palomares Canyon and Palomares Road, and I had been smoking for 30 years and had recently quit when I got into horses, and noticed that I wasn't getting quite enough lung power from riding my two horses every day, and so I decided to get a bike. So I got this $300 specialized hybrid bike and put my little dog in the basket in the front of it and started riding up Palomares Canyon. And every day I'd mark the place that I got to, and then the next day try to beat it and go further until I got to the top of Palomares, and that was a wahoo day. So that was the beginning of cycling for me. Then I moved down to Monterey, got a divorce, and moved down to Monterey County, and had two horses and could not take one horse out and leave the other because they'd go crazy. And so they became pasture ponies, and I got this specialized hybrid and took off. So the first year that I was riding on the road, well, actually, I rode for 5 years. I rode from time I was 57 on Palomares, and then I got divorced and went down to Monterey. So from 58 to 62, I rode with the Monterey Velo Club and tried to get as many hills as I could and just get as powerful as I could. So by the time I was 62, I heard about the senior games. I just missed the ones that they had in Fort Ord that year. I just missed them, but heard about the Huntsman games in Utah. And so 2002 in October, I did my first competing on bikes with in Utah. And oh, they have a great program there because they have 4 divisions. And so I was in the novice division, my first races ever. And I broke records and all kinds of nice things like that. So I was hooked, absolutely hooked. And the next year went to Virginia for my first nationals and got 3 silvers and a bronze in my first nationals, which was, beyond the pole. I mean, it was so exciting. So I haven't missed a national since then, and have missed very few of the California games, and have done a lot of the Arizona games, and have gone to Wyoming and done some there. And it's fun to go all over the place and try all these different states, because they all have some neat things to go and see. So you can take a little vacation along with having a bike thing going. So that's what I've done.
Well, it's always great to see you when you show up at a race with a great bike and a great helmet and crazy wonderful clothes. So I've got some great pictures. So anyhow, thanks for being here. Tom Simpson, the race director par excellence, never worries about anything, always puts on a great race, always tells me to calm down, and always has the medics there. And I don't think, knock on wood, we've ever had to use one of them. So Tom, I know you have other attributes around cycling other than being my race director. So why don't you talk a little bit about your cycling career?
I got a license first in 1974 and raced Northern California until 1977. And then I had to focus on getting a job, taking care of my kids and family, and racing became secondary. And I got to have still a foot in the business by working at events. I was on stage doing race commentary for 20 years. Worked at Sea Otter for a long time as their communications director, and then started our own promotions company 20 years ago, and created a number of events, mostly cyclocross, but a lot of criteriums, a lot of road events, until we retired 5 years ago. And don't have much equipment left. I have tables, chairs, and tents. That's about it.
It's okay. We can make it work.
We're going to have to. Well, I can ask Robert Leibold. He's still got plenty of equipment.
Yeah, we can make it work. I can't tell you how many cyclists are calling me to say, when are you going to do something? When are you going to have, I mean, Robert just did that a little while ago. And can we only just have time trials? Can't we do something more than that? So we'll talk offline, but I think we can get something done this year. So Ted. Ted is a longtime friend. worked with me on the Olympic bid in 2012 in the San Francisco Bay Area. And then I pulled him into helping with cycling, getting good advice about courses and stuff, and he's been part of our Olympic alumni in the Bay Area. So he and I are both Olympians. Me not in cycling clearly, but in swimming. So Ted, tell us what you're doing now and how your cycling career has gone, okay?
My cycling definitely contributed to what I'm doing now as a avocation in sports psychology or in mental performance, because I was marveling when I got into cycling, and I know Tom Simpson knows this quite well, as well as many of you, that your head space really can make or break your performance most of the time. I mean, of course, your legs do the talking, but your head can either allow or prevent you from doing what you are capable of. So I actually got into cycling after my real, quote unquote, real sport was windsurfing. So I did that when I was young. And so that was my Olympic sport, actually. But then after I did the 2 Olympics for windsurfing, I wanted to try a more aerobically challenging sport. And I decided straight away, oh, riding a bike, that should be pretty easy, right? So, and it takes less equipment than windsurfing. So it should be no brainer. So I literally started with the intent of racing the bike, quickly learned that it was a team sport. And that's what I really gravitated toward, was that sense of community and also feeling like you're part of something bigger and a bigger purpose. So even though I had an adequate domestic career racing the bike, I actually got a lot more satisfaction helping others. Like, so one of the highlight years, which Tom might remember, was when we had Chris Horner on the team, and we were able to race and beat Lance Armstrong's team and some European teams at the San Francisco Grand Prix in 2004. And that was an amazing example of rising up to an occasion and going well beyond what you physically thought you could do, because you had this purpose that was just bigger. So that really inspired me tremendously to then start looking at how can I help others by helping develop mindset tools to really be in the moment. And that's why a lot of us ride bikes or do any sport for that matter, or yoga, or activity that kind of calms the mind in some sense, is that it allows you to be in the moment. So that was kind of why I got into the whole bike racing thing. So I have to say I'm honored to have got to know Ann Cribbs. I bet we may have been picked up by the same Palo Alto Fire Department people when I broke my hip a year and a half ago coming down Page Mill. I just remember how nice the paramedics and the rangers were, and it was just like, I felt bad, like I just inconvenienced them. They're probably doing something worthwhile and they had to pick me off the ground. And I think that's another thing that cycling allows us to do, is little things like that. Appreciate, well, I might have broken my hip, but hey, I had a great experience in spite of all that. Or maybe I didn't win the senior games, but you talked about, Barbara, like the fun of it, like the experiences. You too, Sylvia, like it's the experiences that we remember that go along with it, the good and the bad and the suffering, even if it is road rash or worse. But so anyways, that's my background, is that I'm really, again, it's just fun to be here. And the common theme I see with so far just the 3 of us who spoke, which just 4 of us who all spoke, is that this sense of community that the senior games builds. And also what Tom and Ann and Annie as race organizers, directors are doing is, right, you're building a community. And so the bigger community you can build, like having panels like this, I think it feeds on itself and hopefully kind of keeps the energy going and increases it. So sorry, that's what I just wanted to, if there's anything else, obviously ask questions.
No, Ted, thanks so much for saying that. And you're absolutely right. Annie and Kristen, who runs the San Diego Games, and I really have loved the idea of reaching out to our athlete community to say, hey, let's get together during this time of COVID. It's been really good. And my apologies. I always think of you in cycling, and I know that you are the windsurfer guy. And I don't know why I said that, but anyhow, thanks for making the correction. And no, it's very interesting. So let's move on to Dorothy Wong, who is very involved in cycling and cyclocross, and tries to and a competitor herself, and a very interesting bio. Dot, are you here with us? Talk a little bit about your cycling experiences.
Yes. Hi. Thanks, Anne. And thanks everybody for this amazing get together. I actually, looking on this screen here, see a lot of young friends. Paganini.
Yes.
I might have known him the longest, right? How long have we known each other? And also Tom Simpson, definitely one of my mentors. And as a competitor in cyclocross, I've known Tom for, I would say, probably, don't be scared, Tom. I think since 1997 or 1999.
At least that. 89, I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so and the great competitors that I've known through the senior games that we've been also. So I've now, let's see, I'm circling around in many avenues. I am still a event organizer. I still put on cyclocross. We took a break this year. So I'm still planning on doing cyclocross this fall. In fact, Saturday, I'm working with the Wounded Warriors, doing their finish line support for their cycling qualifiers. We're going to do a time trial. So I do finish line support for the senior games. And I just wanted to read this really quick before I talk about myself. I wrote this on my Facebook page about the senior games. The annual cycling event, out of the hundreds that I've organized and supported over the years, the Pasadena Senior Games, or California Senior Games, depending which year we were doing what, was always at the top of my list. I realized the community, the camaraderie, the partnerships, and the purpose brought together many happy people competing from age 50 to 80 plus. The Grandmaster cycling team brought the vibe together, and the best awards ceremony where everyone got a podium kiss and a medal and podium play on music and decades worth of music, dancing during the race, cheering on all the athletes and for all to enjoy. Maybe we always had a competition on whether the music was good or not. We all danced and sang and smiled while cheering on the athletes. All attended the celebration, smiles and photo ops. So that was my paragraph today, reflecting on the moments when I started helping with the senior games. I was not a senior yet, eligible to compete. And I had been doing enough, I don't know how old I was. I might have been 48, somewhere in my later 40s. And then as I started being a race director, I realized, hey, I'm 50 now. I can compete. So anyway, so that became also the highlight. I would start the time trials and be the last one in there and hand the microphone over and jump on the bicycle and then zip around on the time trial course. And then Barbara, she's so fast, I think she kicked my booty that year.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I started just like everyone else as a young girl. I found the bicycle as my tool for freedom. And I took that and I threw it away. How dare I do that? I went to college. Well, I wanted to play sports, so I played basketball. That was my number one passion, softball. And but what was really good that I didn't realize was endurance sports. So when I was a little girl, I would win the track meets and I had no idea why I was winning. So then somewhere along the line, I worked in Hollywood for 20 years. And in that time, I bought a bicycle again. I wanted to get back into shape. And I thought it was the most amazing thing to get back into shape. I bought a mountain bike and I never looked back. From there, I got to live my childhood dream at 30 years old, and I became an elite mountain bike racer. I raced Tom's races, cyclocross, whatever else we did. 7-time national medalist at cyclocross in my master's age groups. And then I met my husband through the bicycle. And our honeymoon was driving, getting in a motorhome in Southern California with our friends. And we beelined it to Edmonton, Canada. And we, after I had just gotten married, we got there in just enough time to pre-ride the mountain bike course. And the next day, without overthinking, as Ted had explained, I jumped into the race and I followed my instincts and I didn't overthink anything. And I won the gold medal, beating out 27 Canadian women, which I'm proud. I was able to beat them because they're tough ladies out there. And I won the gold medal in mountain biking that year. And then, like any good person who works in production, I ended up putting on, it just became natural to put on the bicycling events. And then through there, this amazing sport of bicycling and the fact that people are, we don't have safe streets on the road. How do we make it safe? Why are my friends dying? Why are people getting hurt? I started to evolve into a bicycling advocate, so to speak. And this tool of cyclocross, I started packaging cyclocross into open street events and doing kitty cross, which was always our highlight event at the cross races. And people said, Dorothy, can you do that for us at this event and that event? And at Long Beach, we brought in tons of dirt and built a pump track in a parking lot for the day. And so at the end of the day, I'm now a town council member and a strong advocate starting a traffic safety and mobility committee of the town council. Also loving nature. I'm studying to be a California naturalist now, and really working to advocate for a healthier, safer, livable community. Applying for an AARP grant. It's due on Wednesday. That's it.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Well, as I sit here watching the five of you and listening to you, I am so excited about all of the connections. Who knew when we started to put this panel together that you would know either of each other or know each other or have longtime friendships and all of that. And it really comes through. So I'm really excited to continue on here. You know, we talk a lot about sports bringing the world together. In fact, I once heard George Shultz, the great Secretary of State, say that sports may be the last opportunity we have to have a discussion with people from different places, because sports brings us together rather than makes us separate or pushes us apart. And you know, along with that, I kind of think about the themes today of friendship, of you guys, of the determination to get on the bike, and the persistence to keep with it and showing up and never giving up. And all those are qualities that I see in the five of you. So could you address yourself to this question, and just a couple of sentences, but what are you doing to keep mentally and physically fit in this time of COVID that we are all experiencing? So Tom, let's start with you. On mute. Tom, can you be off mute? Okay, great.
How's that? Better?
Good, yeah.
I'm out on I-5, so I don't know what my connection is like.
That's okay.
But
So
I have my jeans and my belt are on the last notch. So I have to get back and do some real serious daily bike riding because I don't want to have to get all new clothes. But right now they are maxed. I don't like that feeling. So I'll let you know when I get back to second notch on my belt.
We'll hold,
The goal is
we'll hold you to that. Barbara, what are you doing?
Okay, thank you.
I'm gaining weight too. But I'm lucky that I'm a cyclist because,
Yeah.
you know, I can ride outside and I ride alone. And so I don't have to worry about wearing a mask. I go on hills where there's nobody else riding, and it works out pretty well. And for motivation, though, it doesn't work real well. I think I noticed, Sylvie, you wear an iWatch?
Yes.
So do I. That gives me a lot of motivation. Yeah. So I've really used that in the last year. Get as many virtual medals as I can each week and month, and it really does help the mindset.
Sylvia, what about you? What are you doing to keep in shape? Here comes
Honestly,
the
it
part
hasn't
about
been a
that long race.
Yeah, it hasn't been a problem for me at all. I ride every day. I ride, thousands of miles a month because I'm in Borrego Springs. There's nobody here. I also train indoors a lot. The whole indoor with the Zwift program now has just it's really changed the biking world, especially for the Europeans who were really on lockdown. So I'm a workout junkie. So whether I'm indoors or outdoors, I just need those endorphins. So for me, I'm just lucky. It hasn't, the staying in shape has not been an issue for me.
Well, that's great. That
Yeah,
is
I'm
great to know.
fortunate.
You're an inspiration.
Oh,
Dorothy, what about you?
I definitely have packed on a few extra kilos or pounds. But I use the bicycle when I can, just to sort of do errands, make sure that I'm, doing whatever I can to move around by bicycle. But walking has really increased in my life. And then my husband and I adopted 2 dogs pre-COVID and during COVID. So we have more motivation to exercise. So that's been really helpful.
Good, good, excellent. Ted?
Yeah, Dorothy, I love what you're doing. Really jealous about the dogs. We can't find one to adopt. It's few and far between. Yeah, so for me, I've been fortunate. I'm not riding as much as I used to because there's no group social rides happening, or I don't feel comfortable doing that. But I've been with the motivation issue. I've been just getting out and trying to appreciate the times I do get out. And then, like Dorothy was saying, maybe adding something to your environment that would be conducive to getting, like walking after dinner, like most Europeans do, or for example, or just doing something move. I think the movement piece is something that you can get all down and when you're stuck inside. And I think that's where bad things happen. But if you can move, whether it's get on a trainer or just do something, once you are doing it, we talk about being in the moment. I keep harping on that, but it allows you to kind of stop with the mental clutter. You kind of can leave the thoughts behind for a little bit. So I haven't had a problem. I'm not as quote unquote fit as I used to be in terms of high intensity stuff, but I just appreciate getting out in nature, especially, we're in the Bay Area, the high rent district. So the more you can get out, the better, I think. And even like you're saying, and like appreciating if you have an accident, recognizing that's the price you will pay for getting out sometimes. And it's just, you have to just accept that that's the price. So I haven't had any problems.
I want you to know, when you're talking about indoor and if we were talking about stationary bikes, that I did go get myself a stationary bike to try to help with my rehab. And I have my phone set every day at 5 o'clock that says it's time for you to get on the bike again. And I really look forward to it. And the funniest part about it was I said to my family, "Oh, I'm going to go on my bike." And everybody was like, "Oh my God, you can't do that. You're not going to have another crash." So anyhow, it's been
actually, if I may add, I think that's a really important thing to remember is why not use, like, people with Apple Watches or the indoor trainers, use technology to your advantage. Don't let it be used against you, but use the parts of it that help. So, we talk about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Like if you're internally motivated, you need a combination of the two, right? As athletes or any endeavor. So use that Zwift or use those for both. And then you can also see your improvement, right? Because with those little tests that you do on the trainer, you can see improvement. So just doing the little milestones can, I think, really help us get more motivated. Because that's a big issue I've seen with a lot of my clients is motivation during this time.
Well, that's a perfect segue into my next question, which is if you could give 2 training tips to the people on the Zoom right now, what would they be? What would be your 2 most important training tips, either for motivation or, anything about nutrition, anything to make you a better cyclist or just a better workout person? So who wants to start with that? Maybe Dorothy?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the answer to your question when you asked. So definitely motivation is a good thing. So we're kind of, depending where, we're all in California-ish, I think. But we're slowly making our way out of COVID right now. So as a council member, I'm actually creating a virtual challenge right now using the organizing skills to get the community walking. And we're creating, you all have smartphones, I think, maybe, but these nature walks, we're aligning with the community nature challenge. And so on our walks, we're actually creating a loop, sort of a trail loop. And also the county has put in a protected expanded sidewalk. So we're challenging people to walk. So back to, all of us as athletes, it's in our soul to want to feel challenged. So we're creating a nature challenge where you can get on an app called iNaturalist, which is really awesome. iNaturalist. And when you walk around, instead of passing by the plants, like, we are kind of being more appreciative and thinking about mindful of our space and thinking about the amazing type of native habitat or plants around you. And you can just do it around the neighborhood and the block. And then when we actually input the data, it becomes research data. So if people follow it, it's really fun. So iNaturalist, challenge your friend, go out and walk around the neighborhood.
Dot, can you put that in the chat? Because then
Yes.
we'll have a record of it. That would be great. Thank you very much. Sylvia, what about you?
Well, for kind of writing I do, and I think even for people trying to get into any sport, I think consistency is really important, that you're doing it, whether it's daily or every other day, but you have a consistent schedule and you try to keep it. And then I think really important for all of us in this age group is recovery. And when you work out hard, you just need to make sure that you are giving your body enough time to recover, or you won't improve. If you're just beating out the miles every single day and you're never taking any time off the bike, everything, actually your immune system gets depressed. Emotionally, you get depressed because you're not letting your body have a chance to, get back to zero.
So recovery is different for different people, but what would you suggest in terms of?
So recovery doesn't mean do nothing. Recovery means, well, for me, like today it would seem like a lot for you, got a lot of people, a 2-hour recovery ride. But what it means is you're spinning lightly, you're getting the lactic acid out, but you're getting some endorphins. So endorphin junkies need that. And you are using muscles. Also, recovery can be going on a walk, going on a hike, swimming, doing some other type of training, but not pounding out the miles that you're normally doing. Super, super important. My cycling, I'm working with the coach, and my cycling has improved a lot because I'm actually recovering more. So
good. Very good to know. It's great. Tom, what about you? Tom, are you connected to us? Okay, let me go to Ted. You're on mute, Ted.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I like kind of what the theme of setting small goals for yourself that are tangible. I think is really helpful. In terms of the motivation piece, reframing is something I think as we get older, we tend to do better and better, or it's a survival mechanism. So if we can learn to look at situations with a little different perspective, I think that's also really helpful. But I also really love what Sylvia said in terms of, recover as hard as you train, right? Because I mean, that's where you actually get better. You've heard of stories of Ned Overend, who still has this crazy high level of fitness, but he's very selective in how he trains, and he also spends a lot of time recovering because our bodies can't take that repeated beating. And as Sylvia mentioned, you tend to then just plateau, and you don't ever go back to baseline, and you never actually super compensate, right? As athletes, we all know that's where that's the golden fleece, so to speak, is when you super compensate and you recover higher than you
Yeah.
before. That's the next level. But in terms of goals, I just feel like I'm a big proponent of appreciation, trying to be, having gratitude for that we could actually do this and that we have a choice. And actually, another thing, this is kind of tangential, is smile as much as possible, because I actually think there's something to be said for smiling, and there has been a little research around smiling, increasing your performance. I won't go into it now, but just that's very simple. It's not too hard to smile, even fake a smile.
That's great. Thank you. Barbara, what about you?
One thing that, well, I really relate to what you said about getting out there with nature. I have iNaturalist, and I like to combine exercise with fun. So I take my pups, I take them for a walk every day anyway. And so I start looking for wildflowers for the next 3 months. I find wildflowers, take pictures of it, get them on iNaturalist, bring them home, put them on my computer, and make a shutterfly book. So I'm in the process of putting that together and having a ball with that. For cycling, I think varying the type of cycling that you do, like intervals one day and hills another day and sprints another day, and varying it like that really gets you set up to do most anything that goes with cycling. And if you have COPD like I do, my pulmonologist loves me because I'm his poster child, because I try to get my heart rate up as high as I can every day, because that clears out the lungs and keeps them functioning. So cycling is great for that. I guess those are my tips.
Those are great tips for sure. So I'm going to ask that if anybody has any
It
questions.
looks like Tom's back. So,
Back. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Tom, are you hearing me right now? No, he looks like he's frozen. We're gonna let him unfreeze. He's on I-5, so that's. Are you back, Tom?
Well, I'm here. Could you hear me?
We now can hear you. Yes, and the question was
Okay.
any tips, training tips that you might have that you'd like to share.
Yeah, but my training tips are going to be a little bit more sedentary.
I'm sure we'd all love to know
I'm an
that.
old bike racer, and I've been to whether it's Southern California. So I get up frequently at 6 because I subscribe to 3 different TV racing videos, so I could watch racing live, and that's my jump start to get back on the bike and stay on the bike.
Great.
Just watching. When 1989, I was working a race over in Newark, and the race director, who had a French wife, this was the start of the race, probably about 8 o'clock in the morning. He came up to me and said, "Tom, I've got some really fantastic news. I just spoke to my sister-in-law in Paris. You cannot believe what just happened." And this was the end of the tour. Last day, it was Sunday, last day of the tour. We had to keep that noise quiet until the very last race was finished. And we told everyone, okay, guess what? Gicquel won. And it was pandemonium, and there was enthusiasm and excitement, and just that kind of communication. Then I'm not sure how much that phone call cost.
That's great. Well, things have changed a little bit, huh? I'm going to ask the people who are
Because those were in the olden days before cell phones, and it was expensive, but it was worth while having. And I just cannot imagine today.
Okay, we've lost you again, Tom, so we're going to move on for a second. I wanted to ask everybody who is
To watch
part of this
hokey little can watch them, and I see all these, can steal ideas from them, borrow
I'd like to ask everybody who's part of the Zoom to send a question if you'd like, or raise your hand, and Annie and I will watch you for a question. And then while we're doing that, I wanted to give our great panelists another time for just any other words of wisdom about cycling, about your philosophy of life, about anything in general that you'd like to share with everybody, because you've all been terrific. Okay, so Ted, let's kick that off with you. Words of wisdom for all of us.
Jim, God, there are so many. That's the thing. How do you
I know.
I think with the pandemic, I think there's been a heightened base level of anxiety that maybe all of us have been experiencing, and I just think that we lost our sense of community, obviously with the senior games too, being on hold. It starts feeling like there's all these things out of our control. So I guess the words of wisdom I have is focus on what can you control in your life right now. And I think a lot of the comments that the panelists described are things they could control: going out for a walk, doing iNaturalist, doing little projects, doing little things that make you happy, that are out of the ordinary, and also continuing to be curious, most of all. Like, I think the moment you lose your curiosity, that's when things can start going downhill. And I think in terms of preparing cycling, specifically for cycling, it's like you could still do the intervals. Like, I know a lot of people now who are fitter than they ever were before, because they're doing Zwift and they're doing indoor riding, because now it's more structured. And I think because we can be more prone to injuring ourselves, why not mix it up? You can have some outdoor rides, could be the longer rides, but do your intervals on the trainer. It's not necessarily as fun, but you get the job done. And I think, because as you know, the more miles you put on outside, the higher probability of falling down. That's just the way it goes. So, use the technology to your advantage. So I guess that would do that. And then enjoy the moment,
Yes.
Even the suffering. That's like kind of a important but dumb thing to remember.
Well, I like that. Enjoy the moment. Barbara, words of wisdom.
I agree with do things that are fun for you, and look back to your childhood and figure out what was fun then and try to bring it back into your life now if you can. Play a lot. And I like to work still too, because that keeps my mind going, and I think it adds to my overall feeling about life and all. If I just do some of this and some of that and some of everything that I like, I have fun, and the day is over and I'm ready for the next to start.
Yeah, that's a great description, and I will not ever forget you're talking about being a 6-year-old, getting on the bike and loving the feel of the wind through your hair. That was great. I can see the 6-year-old Barbara Gicquel doing that. I can exactly do that. Sylvia, what about you?
Well, actually, my thought was, I have a lot of friends that have bought e-bikes in this last year. And I'll tell you, the e-bike, I think it's a great addition to the whole cycling community. It allows people that might not ride a bike at all because, there's a hill and I can't get up it, or it allows people to go on long rides with friends. One of my best friend rides with me. I'll do a 100-mile ride. She's got 2 batteries for her e-bike, so she can ride with me the whole way on her e-bike. And you can get as much exercise or as little exercise as you want on an e-bike, but they allow you to get out and do stuff where otherwise a lot of people would be, just wouldn't.
Boy, you may have suggested something that probably won't be good for my budget, but maybe that's my trick to getting back on the bike outdoors.
You can pick them up for not that much, a lot less than a nice carbon bike.
Well, unless you want one that's light, and then pay big bucks.
Yeah.
But that's worth it. And it's much easier to handle a light bike. So put it out for that.
Yeah, it might be a thing, definitely. Well, thank you very much for that. Dorothy, what about you? Last words of wisdom.
Yeah. So just So to tag on to Sylvia really quick, purpose, my takeaway words is purpose, and similar to what Barbara was talking about too, like, but purpose without pressure.
Mhm.
So for me, for my 55th birthday, I guess I'm still a entry-level senior, but for my 55th birthday, I went on a solo journey with no pressure, and I rode my bicycle. I took the train, Amtrak, to Orange County, actually to Anaheim Stadium, and I rode my bike with no pressure. And it was one of the most amazing trips I ever took. I
Mm.
didn't worry about how fast I went. I enjoyed the views. I enjoyed the challenge of that feeling of getting out of the saddle, like, you know, and climbing up the hill. And then everything organic just came together. And then I feel super motivation is the other word. I feel more than ever motivation for what's ahead. Like, wow, even though I gained weight, how do I change? How do I slow down my behaviors to be more productive, you know, in my future endeavors? So I find, maybe perhaps a new purpose and new motivation.
I think that's great. You guys are really terrific. And I can't tell you from my perspective how much I've enjoyed listening to all of you talk about cycling and your worlds and that kind of thing. I love the iNaturalists, and I am going to look that up very soon. So that's a great takeaway for me, and the whole idea of enjoying the moment and practicing gratitude, because we're all actually very fortunate, and it's good for me to think about that often. So I really appreciate all of you, and what I'd like to do now is turn this back to Annie, and so you can unlock people in the magic way and see if we have questions or people want to just make connections with people that they know. I see some of that in the chat. So Annie, and then I'll come back for the end. Okay. You're on mute as well.
Yeah, there we go. And so if Anne, if you want to take a look at the chat, I think that some of those they've actually answered in their in the discussions. So we do have, we don't have to go exactly at 5 o'clock. So if you have a question, you can raise your virtual hand or turn on your video and wave it at the camera and call on you, or go ahead and put any other questions in the chat, and we'll go from here. So there's got to be some questions.
Well, I have a question. Could somebody do a quick definition of that indoor training that you spoke about?
ZWIFT.
Yes, please.
What about it?
What is it? What does that stand for?
It's an app. It's an app, and it's worldwide, and you can ride with.
So new to me. There, go ahead.
It's like virtual writing, basically. You are looking at a screen like on your computer. You can see yourself, so you could be writing. So they have courses. So you're writing, let's say, mountains or jungles or whatever you're writing, or you can do group rides, you can do races. And as Ted said, a lot of people's writing has improved tremendously, because the way it works is for a lot of people have them where they have they'll show you the grade, and your grade is changing, right? So you're at like a 1% grade and then an 8% grade. So then the resistance changes, and your bike is even moving up and down with that. So it's simulating actual road riding that's also putting in the resistance that you would have when you're riding hills. And so all that is just going to really improve your riding when you get back on the road.
So is it like the programs that are on the Peloton?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's bigger.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
more interactive.
Yes.
And it's one thing to remember is that I would consider it takes, you get 1.5 times the workout for an hour of trainer workout, it's probably an hour and a half outside, because there's no coasting.
Yeah,
It's
you're
like,
always pedaling.
Oh, okay.
constant pressure on the pedal. So don't get discouraged because it'll seem like you're pedaling through molasses some of the time, and it's definitely a different type of racing. So I know there's a whole adjustment period if you're racing on like Zwift, for an example, because when you're drafting somebody and then there's all sorts of different tricks. You can gamify Zwift to extraordinary, I mean, not to an extraordinary degree, but it's definitely, I've heard there's all these tips. So don't get discouraged in your first races because it's not like outdoor riding. But
Okay.
it still requires power and fitness.
So I see Dorothy's saying ride it while you're Zooming in your Zoom meetings. That's
Yeah, so it's
That's a
please
great idea.
riding.
yeah.
Well, I have actually not so much a question, but before we let everybody into the room, we were chatting amongst ourselves, and Sylvia was telling us some crazy stories about her long and ridiculously painful rides, and I think it would be fun for people to hear a little bit more about how and why you do that.
Oh, well, I enjoy it. I mean, it's only for endurance riding is different than going out for a 30-mile bike ride is really enjoyable. Going out for a 300-mile bike ride, it could be enjoyable or it could be really painful. So it's a mindset. You obviously have to have the fitness, but endurance sports of any type, I don't care if you're talking ultra running, backpacking for 30 miles a day. It's a mindset that you teach yourself how to do it, and so your training is a mindset too, and you are training your mind and your body to sit on a seat for literally many days without sleep, basically, and that's what it is. And so it takes years and years to build that, really to build the muscle mass to be able to do it. But more importantly than anything is your mind in it, I think, because if you don't have the mind, that's what seems like Ted's doing to help people with the psychology behind sports. It is so much up here.
And Sylvia, how much of it are you enjoying in the moment versus post ride or basking in the flow?
It like this race, I just did a pretty long race recently, and it was really great. And I said to my crew, at 400 miles, I said, this would be a great place. It should end now, because the last 100 miles was super, super brutal for lots of reasons. So I would say 80% of that ride I enjoyed, and the last 20 I could have done without. And my crew kept me on my bike. They literally kept riding. They kept driving a little bit ahead of me so that I could never catch up to them. So I just kept having to go. And you have a lot of people that are doing Race Across America. Believe me, it's not all fun and games. There's a lot of emotional breakdowns, and that's what your crew is there to help you get back on your bike and literally push you and get you going again. So it's like I said, it's not something that I would only recommend it to people that really like to do endurance sports of any type, because they're all kind of the same mental mindset.
I like the senior games idea of 5K, 10K, 20K, and 40K.
Right. That's a sprint. That's a time trial. It's a complete, your training is so different than my training. I mean, I do intervals and I do lots of hill work and stuff, but you're training for like a really short period of time. So it's a sprint, right? Pretty much.
Pretty much.
And I'm looking at, and I tell people that I start cycling with me, and they oh, well, I rode 19 miles an hour for 2 hours, and I'm like, you need to change your thought here, because you're not going to be riding 19 miles an hour for 500 miles. You're going to be riding 13 miles an hour. It's just it's totally different. You still feel like you're riding 19 miles an hour because you're so exhausted, but you aren't. So it's just very different that way.
All right, well, I'm gonna ask then another question of Ted, because I'm busy writing notes down from everything that you guys all said. I'm not an athlete myself, but everything that you talk about motivation just helps me in my daily life here. And I really appreciate how you set your mind for a 500-mile race as opposed to 40 kilometers, as opposed to just enjoying being in the moment. So just, I guess a little bit about sort of how you go about setting your mind to where it needs to be. Do you understand the question?
It's a process. I bet Sylvia will agree with me. It's a process. It doesn't just happen like that. It takes practice. So one of the things we work on, actually another tip, is positive self-talk, or I call it constructive self-talk, because it doesn't have to be necessarily positive. I'm sure any athlete here has used it. You can say, harden the F up, which isn't exactly positive, but it might have their desired result in making you tougher or in the moment, but literally practicing mantras or affirmations that you may not even believe, but that will help you. And what it really is doing, in some sense, is distracting you from pain, or it's a distraction from the mind clutter is what I call it. It puts you back more in the moment, and it simplifies things. That's the problem with being human, is we tend to overanalyze and overcomplicate things a lot. And maybe that's why, Sylvia, you do some of these long ass bike rides, is to kind of declutter and simplify things, because it's just you and the bike and you're pedaling and not much else. And then there's your crew, and you have this simplified view of, I don't want to let my crew down now, so I'm going to finish, right? So you have this purpose greater than yourself. So that's another thing I always look at, and you'll see that research supports this, that when you have a purpose bigger than yourself, it makes you tougher. I mean, it's like, that's why team sports are so popular and so successful, or businesses, right? It's all about that community that you don't want to let down, or that purpose that you're trying to achieve, or whether it's iNaturalist, you're helping your community identify certain. It's a cool feeling, and it I think also diffuses the pressure that you put on yourself too, when you have this team piece, because the spotlight's not really on you in some sense, right? It's you're just part of the process, and you don't have to put as much pressure on yourself sometimes.
I think one of the great things about Zwift, or riding with a bunch of people that your community, one of the best things about it is it feels more like a road race rather than a time trial, because you're not just concerned with the suffering that's going on in your body. Instead, you're thinking about, how can I get up there one more?
And another thing about endurance stuff in general is, like, if you're out on like a 8-hour training ride or 10-hour training ride, those 8 and 10 hours aren't necessarily all going to be fun, because for cyclists, wind can be just really defeating. And so I've learned, like, don't fight the wind. I don't try to pedal harder. And I always think to myself, okay, I think I have about an hour of this wind. And so I just kind of just sit down on my aero bars, and I just kind of pedal, and I know eventually it will pass. And so I think with endurance sports, because I think that's kind of what you're asking about, is being able to just get through those tough times, whether you are riding solo or whether you have your crew and they're pushing you. It definitely, how your mood just changes in 10 hours anyways, just like in life. So think how it changes with your blood sugar levels and your endorphins and your exhaustion. It's just like a roller coaster. And so I think one of the things, like, I'm sure Ted probably works on with his clients, is trying to not be so like this, and just trying to, be more in your head, more steady.
So Annie, that was a great question. Did you get a great answer? I think you did. Yep. I think it's great. So I think it's certainly time to say goodbye, but I have a lot of takeaways about this particular panel. So thank you all very, very much. As I said earlier, you guys have been a great inspiration and have given really good advice. And I especially like the fact that I didn't really hear any negative thoughts on this whole, or any negative comments on this whole panel, which I think is a real attribute of all the athletes that I know. It's really good to be able to think about positive things and thinking about the future instead of thinking about the past and all of that. So thank you. I wanted to say that this recording will be up probably tomorrow, but for sure on Wednesday on our California Senior Games.org website, and it will be available. We're going to leave it up there because people are going back and listening to them. And as I've said about the other 4 or 3 panels, certainly now the 4th one, lots of great words of wisdom here. So thank you all very much for spending the hour with us, and thank all of you on the Zoom for spending the hour, and may you all ride well and safely, and we will see you in person at the next Senior Games event very soon. Stay safe in the meantime, and thank you so very much.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Sylvia, Barbara,
Thank you.
Dorothy, Ted,
Seeing you, Sarah.
Tom.
Ted.
All right, take care,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Well.
Thank you again so much. Good night.